Hi everyone, my name is Jen Balava. I'm a naturalist with the Burlington County Park System. The following is a slideshow representing some of the information I would have covered in the field as part of the walks originally planned for this time of mid-April. The county parks are definitely closed right now, but I hope that you might be able to find some of these flowering plants in your yard or other local area that is open. I would like to start with the native flowering trees and shrubs first. There are, of course, lots of non-native landscaping trees that are blooming right now, but those will not be covered here. Red maples bloom in March and can be found along most of our local waterways and wetlands. These are really gorgeous flowers if you look at them up close. Red maples have separate male and female flowers normally on different trees. The one you see in the picture are the male flowers, which only contain the pollen. The bees will carry the pollen to the female flowers, which accept the pollen. They have darker red flowers. If the flowers are pollinated successfully, then we'll see these bright red seeds on the female trees later in the month. This year I saw them as early as March 26th. These winged seeds are called samaras, and they fall from the trees on the wind like little helicopters. We still see many red samaras on the red maples now, even in mid-April, which from far away may be mistaken as red flowers. Next we have sassafras and spicebush. Spicebush bloomed a little earlier this year. Spicebush is a shrub that is found in many of our forested areas in Burlington County. They are a multi-stem shrub with yellow flowers in bunches that appear kind of spread out along the stem. After the flowers bloom, the oval leaves will emerge. Sassafras is in the same family, but it's a tree, not a shrub. It has yellow flowers in rounded bunches that appear only at the end of the stem, not all along the stem like spicebush. They both have berries later in the year, which feed a lot of different species of animals. Eastern redbud is a beautiful small tree in the pea family, with bright magenta flowers arranged all along the stems. This tree is native to the eastern and central U.S., but most of the time we see it in a planted setting. After flowering, the heart-shaped leaves will emerge. In the fall, they have long, narrow pea pods. Flowering dogwood is a gorgeous native understory tree that just started blooming around April 14th. They have oval leaves and red fruit in the fall. Many different species of birds and mammals will eat the seeds. Shadbush, or a common serviceberry, is a multi-stem shrub that's normally found on the edge of woods near a wetland. They have white, 5-petaled flowers arranged in clusters at the end of branches. They're said to bloom when the shad are swimming upstream each spring. Highbush blueberry is a common understory shrub found in woods with acidic soil, especially the pinelands. They have clusters of bell-shaped flowers and pink buds. If they're successfully pollinated by insects, then they'll produce yummy blueberries in the summer. Now we're going to move on to wildflowers. I want to start with a special group of wildflowers known as spring ephemerals. These flowers are only present above ground for just a few weeks, if that. They grow in the woods, and they have to come up, bloom, attract pollinators, set seed, and have their seeds dispersed, all in a very short amount of time before they get shaded out by the trees above them. After that, there'll be no sign of these plants above ground. Therefore, they have to have some very specific adaptations. They grow low to the ground so that they're sheltered from inclement weather and wind. They store food from photosynthesis in underground portions of the plant, such as rhizomes and tubers, for a quick supply of energy. And they close their flowers not just at the end of each day, but also on cloudy days, because if rain occurs, it will wash away the flower's precious supply of pollen and nectar, which it doesn't have time to restock. So these flowers will be closed if it's cloudy. Many of these flowers are cup-shaped, and they are pastel in color. All of our spring ephemerals are white, pale pink, or yellow, because those are the colors that are most visible to the widest array of insect pollinators that are out right now. Later in the year, when more insect species emerge, we will see more variety of color in wildflowers. But since these flowers are only out for a couple weeks, they must ensure that they will be seen by the limited insect pollinators that are out. So here's an example of a true spring ephemeral. This is Spring Beauty. Spring Beauty is a gorgeous native wildflower with 5 petals that are usually white with pink streaks that appear darker as the flower ages. The leaves are narrow and grass-like. It's a common low-growing plant found in forested areas. It blooms from usually the end of March until mid-April. In the series of photos below, the first photo on the left shows a new flower with its anthers pushed down to indicate that no insects have visited it yet. Notice how white the petals are. As you look at the photos after that, you can see the progression of more pink streaks, and all the anthers are straight up. The anthers contain the pink pollen, and in this picture you can see that these things change as time goes on. Once the plant has been pollinated and has set seed, the entire plant above ground again will disappear, storing all of its energy in underground tubers until next spring. The next spring ephemeral is wood anemone. These have small white flowers with 5 petals and leaves in a whorl of 3, which are then further divided into 3 to 5 leaflets. Flowers are said to appear when the windy days of spring begin. These form a mat of leaves in a patch, as you can see in the picture on the right. And only those that have a stalk of 3 whorled leaves will develop a flower. Here is a picture of my favorite patch of wood anemone. Dwarf Ginseng just started blooming the week of April 13th. They have a delicate globe-shaped white cluster of flowers and similar leaves to wood anemone. The leaves, as you can see, are whorled and then divided into leaflets of 3 to 5. Although these are in the ginseng family, dwarf ginseng does not contain the medicinal properties of common ginseng. Bloodroot is my favorite of the spring ephemerals. It is usually the earliest of the spring ephemerals to bloom. This year it was exceptionally early, and some of the plants were already in seed by March 30th. In any case, these white flowers usually have 8 petals and are particularly showy and have these really uniquely shaped leaves. Here is a picture of what the flowers look like on a cloudy day. You can see they're closed to protect the nectar and pollen being washed away. And here is a picture of the seed pod, which attract ants. Ants will take the pod and disperse the seeds away from the parent plant. The last of the spring ephemerals that I'm going to cover today is Trout Lily. Trout Lily has a yellow nodding flower with conspicuous mottled leaves said to resemble trout. Flowers only arise from a pair of leaves. The rest of these single leaves you see in the center of the slide will not develop flowers. And here is a picture of what Trout Lily looks like from above. To really appreciate it, you have to kind of get down low on the ground. It's really a gorgeous flower. Here are some other native wildflowers that bloom for a much longer time. First is common blue violet. There are many variations, as you can see here. They can be dark violet, pale violet, or white with violet streaks. They have heart-shaped leaves that are on separate stalks from the flowers. The stems with the flowers have no leaves and are held above the basal leaves. Downy yellow violet is a yellow violet with violet-colored streaks near the middle. They have heart-shaped leaves on the same stalk as the flower, which you can see in this picture. They're definitely not as common as the blue violets on the previous slide. And here is a picture taken on April 14th showing the beautiful display of the yellow violets along the trailside. This is kidney-leafed buttercup. It's named for the leaves at the base that are kidney bean shaped, as you can see in the picture on the left. The leaves on the stem are very different. They're narrow or divided. The flower is extremely small and pale yellow. What you see here is the fullest extent of the bloom. This plant has several other common names, including little leaf buttercup and small flowered crowfoot. The remaining slides illustrate non-native flowering plants that are usually considered weeds, mostly in lawns or other open areas. These are examples of different species of speedwells, which have 4 petals with stripes. They can be white or blue with white. Shown here are ivy-leaved and Persian speedwell. One of the most common types of weeds on the planet are the chickweeds. These are examples of species of chickweeds seen in lawn or field areas. They are low to the ground with hairy leaves and white petals. They are in the pink or carnation family, and they are from Eurasia. If you look out over a large field at this time of year, you're likely to see mats of purple. These are European mints that can be invasive. The most common species is purple dead nettle, which is kind of a bad name since it's not dead or a nettle. These have purple flowers with heart-shaped leaves that also turn purple in color. Now, henbit, which you can see here, has very similar looking flowers, but the leaves are different. They're rounded, whorled, and scalloped on the edges. Ground ivy, which is also known as gill over the ground, is slightly more violet in color and creeps right over the surface of the ground with scalloped type leaves. All 3 of these species bloom in early spring, have square stems, and are all mints native to Europe. There are many kinds of European mustard plants in fields as well. One common yellow species is known as yellow rocket, which is also known as common wintercress, seen here. Another very common European mustard in lawns is the hairy bittercress, which started blooming in March. It has divided basal leaves, as you can see in the picture on the right, and tiny white flowers. The seed pods are brown, long, and narrow, as seen in the picture on the left. Garlic mustard grows in moist forests, both disturbed and undisturbed areas. It's a highly invasive plant that outcompetes native spring wildflowers for light, moisture, nutrient, soil, and space. It was introduced by early European settlers as a year-round source of garlic seasoning for their food. The basal leaves are more rounded and appear the first year, as seen in the photo on the left, and they remain green in the winter. The second year, the upright stalk with more triangular pointed leaves and white flowers emerges. They bloom from mid to late April and can be pulled out when flowering, but the seeds can remain viable for 5 or more years in the soil. Lesser Celandine was introduced as an ornamental plant from Eurasia. All color varieties are invasive. It spreads primarily by vegetative means through abundant tubers and bulbs. The tubers are prolific and may be unearthed by digging activities of some animals and even well-meaning weed pullers, and transported during flooding events. They usually emerge before our native spring wildflowers in large, dense patches of ground cover in wet areas on the forest floor, as you can see in these pictures. And finally, Japanese barberry was introduced as an ornamental in 1875 as seeds sent to an arboretum. And later it was promoted as a substitute for common barberry, which was planted by settlers for hedgerows, dyes, and jams. It's a highly invasive thorny shrub that can grow in forests, fields, or wetlands. It has yellow flowers that hang below the leaves, and then it gets red berries in late summer to fall. These plants can raise the soil pH and alter nitrogen levels of the soil. It can spread by both the seeds and vegetative parts, especially root portions. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned a little bit about the plants that are blooming right now. Feel free to leave comments in the comment section, and feel free to share this video link with others. But please do not download copyrighted images. Thank you for watching.